1 month later, per her words, he maintained a good distance but tried his best to show his love from afar. And about her, she maintained her distance from him, ignored him, declined his plans, pointed out many problems in him, his ways, the dishes he cooked, and threw the flowers he brought. Many more, actually. A lot happened in these months. Apart from him and his issues and efforts, a piece of shocking news was trending among all the social media and other platforms. JJK Corporation CEO John Jungkook has sold the company to PJM Enterprises Limited. Is this the end of John's career? What's the point of selling the best company among the rest? Another shocking news was that JJK Corporation had returned all the money that had been meant to be invested in the upcoming deals. She was astonished because, as per her knowledge, business was the field of Jungkook, who was a legend since college. He was extremely interested in business, and JJK Corporation, brick by brick, was kept in front of his eyes. Her mind was stuck in the news she heard PGM Enterprises, and her mind flashed a man's image Park Jimin, Jungkook's closest friend. Does that mean Jimin's returning to her life too? Sometimes she wondered what was happening in her life. The Jungkook who was staying at her home was much different from the one who cheated. Yes, he was egocentric, but never was a man who wouldn't claim his mistakes. This Jungkook, compared to the last, had lots of differences. She wondered about his absence for 2 years and then a sudden appearance. She wondered whether the efforts he was doing were genuine or not. Was he really here to correct his mistakes, or it was another chance of her heart getting broken? At the current moment, she was at home, as it was the weekend. Jungkook was in the kitchen preparing the lunch. His lunch, if said specifically, yes, he was ordered to not do anything at home that would be considered as his effort. You can go, love. She heard his voice, eyes observing him coming out with a bowl in his hands. His eyes blinked continuously as if he was trying to control himself. Weird. Not responding to him, she silently entered the kitchen. Her hands held the washed pan before she put it on the stove. Her lunch was simple ramen and tteokbokki. She was cooking silently when she saw him entering. He didn't utter a single word and walked towards one of the shelves there. His hand grasped the black pepper powder small sprinkler while the other one held the counter tightly. She noticed his figure. He was losing his balance again and again. He turned to go back to his seat. Suddenly, a loud sound reverbed, followed by Jungkook's scream. Her eyes turned in that direction, hurriedly only to find Jungkook in his knees and hands, holding his head near the broken pieces of the sprinkler. He grabbed his hair tightly, pulling them, but it was no help for him. She just watched him confusedly. Was he pretending to get her attention? Her thoughts clouded her thinking capacity. She was lost in her memories. Sucking a deep breath, she tried to ignore the thing that was happening in front of her, but his groans increased and the volume increased. Abruptly, he hung his head low, hand wiping something off his face. Her thoughts clouded her thinking capacity. Seeing him like this, she decided to ask him about his health. This was the third time she saw him having a severe headache. Perhaps he would be having more, but he never mentioned. He would be a cheater, but she isn't inhuman. She slowly walked towards him, only to be stopped by him. Don't. He spoke. His voice had a feared tone. She ignored. She couldn't ignore a person in pain. She is human, and her heart can't ignore humanity. She reached out to him and was about to put her hand in his shoulder, but she heard him shouting, Don't! With that, he stood and ran away. His face was half hidden due to his hand. 2 weeks later, that incident, nothing changed. After that moment, except for him avoiding the talks where she asked him about that incident. In these weeks, this past feeling were knocking at her heart walls again, but she was keeping her steps carefully, not wanting to get played again after the feeling, the sentiments immensely. He again always planned dates, but she cancelled all. He planned the outings, but she didn't join them. So he eventually decided to prepare home night dates. He always prepared her favorite dishes from different cuisines and decorated the date place with warm lights. The small changes were happening too, in her now. Now she used to make it up to him. Perhaps he was proving her decision of giving him a chance wasn't wrong. Also, another change was that he used to go outside and come home late. And when asked, he used to deny to answer. And this was getting more frequent. Some days he didn't used to return even. Once a cheater, always a cheater. These words rang in her mind. All those insecurities started hitting her amygdala once again. Is he cheating again? But it won't call cheating, right? They weren't in any official relationship. Her thoughts lowered her thinking capability. She was lost in her memories. Hey, love. He sighed, hugged her slender figure, snuggling into her neck. This sent a sharp sensation in her body, but she hated the emotion she was scared of. I have prepared your lunch. Have it, okay? I'll be back as soon as I can. He stared at her emotionless eyes. No, those eyes weren't emotionless anymore. They held emotions he couldn't tell. He felt a sting pain in his heart. He was scared of something he wasn't expecting back. Oh, how badly he wanted to kiss those eyes, but he couldn't. She scanned his face, his eyes, and every single facial feature in the hope of an answer behind his lies. But right now, accepting his words was the only option. So she nodded. He smiled and planted a kiss on her hand before caressing her cheek with the same hand. She looked down while he just took his blazer and exited the place. Her instincts were speaking some things, and the first was to follow him and find the truth. She was determined not to let him play with her heart, not once again. Touching her cheek when he caressed, she looked down, closed her eyes, and sucked a deep breath before exiting her house, following. Her phone showed his track position, and her hands in the steering wheel took turns accordingly. The car eventually was stopped in front of a cafe. His car was parked nearby. Her heart thudded. Why? She didn't know. She took her purse and phone and got down from the car, proceeding towards the cafe until saw through the glass walls. With a girl. Tears immediately brimmed in her eyes. He was still a cheater. He came back to play with her feelings. Without knowing, her tears fell down her cheeks. Everything around her paused. Just two of them talking was all she could see. She hurriedly turned to go but got bumped into someone. I'm sorry. Ryan? A familiar voice hit the insides of her ears. She looked up, only to find his best friend, Jimin. Park Jimin. His face had no emotions, just a monotonous tone in his voice. Perhaps he was unknown of what was happening. I'm not unknown of recent occurring, Ryan. I'm not unknown of anything. She looked at him confusedly. If he knew everything, then why his face, his eyes, and his voice didn't have any emotion? That was a huge question. Jimin was the one who was with Jungkook all the time, since middle school. If you are here for covering up his mistakes, then thank you, but I don't want to listen. She spoke coldly before excusing herself to leave. But a hand in her now stopped her from walking away. It was him. She looked at him with no emotions. I'm not here for covering his things. I'm here to let you know the things you should know. What? She was stunned. Her thoughts were true at that time. Those thoughts she later shrugged off while considering letting go of the past. She is his doctor.